Mr. Finkelstein, your report on Amnesty International is damning. You accuse them of propaganda for Israel. Why is it with a reputable organization like Amnesty International you came out with this paper?
Well, I have to say I was enraged as I read the Amnesty reports. I had high expectations from them. They wrote some excellent reports on the Israeli assault in Gaza in 2008-9, the Operation Cast led. And over the past 20 years, they have been pretty reliable in giving giving an accurate description of what's happening in the occupied Palestinian territories. And so it was a complete shock and a profound disappointment to me that Amnesty International completely abandoned its professional mandate and responsibility and in effect turned into an Israeli propaganda organization.
What are your misgivings about them in this respect, on a legal basis?
Well, let's just start with the basics. Amnesty International devoted 2 reports to Israeli war crimes and violations of international law in Gaza, and 2 reports to Gazan violations of international law and war crimes in its attack on Israel. So you have 2 reports on one side, 2 reports on the other side. And in fact, they devoted more pages to Gazan war crimes than they did to Israeli war crimes. Now, let's just look at this balance. Let's just look at the basic numbers. 18,000 Palestinian homes were destroyed during Operation Protective Edge. One Israeli home was destroyed. Incidentally, for your listeners, you will never find in any human rights report on Operation Protective Edge, never, that only one house was destroyed. The only way I found it was because Israel kept on its Ministry of Foreign Affairs website, it kept what it called a war diary, in which it described all damage to civilian structures and injury and deaths of civilians on a day-by-day basis. And I looked through it, and what you come out with were one house was destroyed, and about 10 others were either damaged or hit. That's the only place, because it's so embarrassing, the ratio, 18,000 to 1. Yep. Take children killed. 550 Palestinian children killed, 1 Israeli child killed. Now, I'll admit it myself. I know the name of the Israeli child, Daniel Tragerman. I know his age. He was 4.5 years old. If you ask me the name of 1 Palestinian child killed, I don't know. Amnesty International, in one of its reports, it gave over 2.25 pages to Daniel Tragerman, the 4.5-year-old Israeli child who was killed. If they really believed in equality of human life, there should have been 1,100 pages given over to the 550 Palestinian children.
How many pages were there?
You know, at most maybe 5.
And then what does that lead? I mean, did Amnesty International lose credibility as a result of this report, you believe?
No, I don't think it lost credibility, because I don't think many people noticed what was going on. People just assume Amnesty, it must be telling the truth. You have to you have to read it carefully to notice. For example, when you look at the footnotes.
And this is exactly what you've done.
Yes, if you look at the footnotes, over and over and over and over and over again. They're just citing the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs website. I know you'll find this hard to believe. I was kind of shocked. In their reports, there were 4, they never once, I know it's hard to believe, never once cited a Palestinian human rights organization in Gaza. There's Al-Mazen, there's the Palestinian Center for Human Rights, the PCHR. There are all these NGOs. They're not cited. It's like, what is going on here?
So,
this is just Israeli propaganda.
When it comes to right of self-defense for the Gazans, how did Human Rights, not Human Rights Watch, so Amnesty International deal with that? Do they give them the right of self-defense?
Well, it was interesting how they dealt with that. First of all, we have to start out with the basics. Number 1, Gaza has been under Israeli occupation for nearly a half century. Everybody agrees Israel remains the occupying power in Gaza. Number 2, it's been under an inhuman, immoral, and illegal siege by Israel, the blockade of Gaza. Now, those are already 2 circumstances which would seem to justify a resistance on the part of the people of Gaza, namely an illegal, at this point, an illegal occupation, and by consensus, an illegal blockade and siege. So clearly, for a lay person, let alone a professional, the people of Gaza must have some right of resistance to these 2 conditions imposed on them by Israel. What does Amnesty say? Well, Amnesty says the rockets that Hamas uses, they're illegal under international law. The mortar shells, they say the mortar shells because they are also indiscriminate in populated areas. Hamas can't use those either. It also says under international law, a resistance organization has to take, the expression is, all feasible precautions not to endanger civilian population. So what did they say to Hamas? They said to Hamas, well, there are a few unpopulated areas of Gaza, sort of like the equivalent in New York City. There's Central Park and there's Prospect Park. So they said, you should take all your militants, go into these unpopulated areas, and you can resist from there. But remember, your resistance can't include any weapons, because according to Amnesty, all the weapons are illegal under international law. So basically, the only thing Amnesty didn't tell the people of Gaza is, you should line up like ducks and just wait to be shot down by the incoming Israeli planes. I'm not advocating anything. I'm not advocating armed resistance, not because I'm afraid to. I'm not afraid of saying anything. I just don't like to tell people how should they conduct their affairs. It's for them to decide. But what I do have an objection to is that a morally serious thing to say to the people of Gaza? You acknowledge the occupation has gone on for a half century. You acknowledge the siege is illegal, immoral, and inhuman. You acknowledge the international community has done nothing to lift that illegal, immoral, and inhuman siege of Gaza. And then you counsel the people of Gaza that their militants should go into the unpopulated areas and just stand there waiting to be shot down? Is that serious? No, it's not. It's shameful.
Thank you very much, Mr. Finkelstein.